In 2018, Riot Games was hosting the World Championships for esports, the game we have, League of Legends, in Korea. And around 10 months before the opening ceremony, and this is something in a stadium the size of the World Cup, so you can imagine the stress and everything, we had an idea. What if we create a K-pop group, a virtual band formed by the people, sort of the champions, the characters inside of our game? This virtual band will show up in augmented reality on stage during the opening ceremony, and we will simultaneously release a music video and a new single album. Keep in mind, we have no budget for this. This is not pre-planned. It's not on our roadmap. And we said, you know what? Let's do it. Here's a quick clip of what it looked like.
Running it, I'm so cold. When I move that way, you gon' be so blown. I'm the realest in the game. Said I'm on fire with the blade. You're about to hit my name, ringing in your head like whoa. So keep your eyes on me now. 무엇을 보던 좋아할 거야. So tough, let's get it, show you up. Can you feel the rush now? Ain't nobody bringing us down, 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 down. Think we try, but we gonna win a crown. You could go another round.
The impact was huge. The impact was massive. Let me move here. So the impact was actually huge. We had 100 million views on YouTube in the first 4 weeks. It hit #1 on the digital billboard, #1 on iTunes K-pop. Basically, if this was a real band, this would be the biggest debut of a K-pop group in YouTube history. Now, I'd love to tell you more about that, but in interest of time here, I want to tell you more about how we got there, how we were able to pull off a big pivot like this, a big opportunity like this, basically in record time. And it comes from really, years and years of working. So I'm gonna use a sports metaphor here, where to become an athlete is not something that can be done overnight. As Stephen was talking right before me, it's not something that can be done in a week or two, right? It is years and years and years of deliberate work, discipline, mastery. It's open to everyone, regardless of age, gender, background. You can become an athlete, but it requires hard work. In the world of athletes, they call it a grind, right? This grind is, first one on the field, last one to leave. It's the day-to-day effort, the day-to-day pushing of like that discipline, when you don't want to do it and you have to get up and work and all that kind of stuff. That's the grind. And so this journey of business agility is a grind. It is hard work, driven by an identity that requires persistent effort. It takes a long period of time, and it requires a growth mindset. And the important part, ladies and gentlemen, is it has no shortcuts. Many people try to can't we just do this and it will work? No, it has no shortcuts. I want to talk about each of these, but continuing the metaphor of sports and bodybuilding. When we embark on a journey of, athletics or, bodybuilding or fitness, we got to understand our strengths and weaknesses. We have to understand our muscle groups. We have to understand, where do we need to invest more time and effort? Where are we already strong, and so forth. And so, similar to this metaphor of understanding the muscle groups that we have, right? We have the same sort of muscle groups in business agility. And I'm going to use the domains of business agility as my reference for this. So similar to the picture I just showed you about the muscle groups, I want you to imagine these as being the muscle groups, but for an organization, for the agility of an organization. And right at the middle here, we have the core. So your core muscles, right? These are the foundational muscles that enable alignment around this idea of customer centricity, right? Stephen before me just talked about, like, it is about creating value for the customer. It really is. This new generation of companies, it's all about customer centricity. It's not just creating inward value, but value to the customer. And at the heart of this customer centricity is what I call the purpose and identity. Why does your company exist? Is it to fight on behalf of a customer, or is it just for profitability or some other shareholder gain? At Riot Games, it is our mission from day one. We aspire to be the most player-focused game company in the world. That's really our core purpose, our core mission, and we implement that every single day. Player is more important than Riot. Riot is more important than a team, and a team is more important than an individual. Think about these sort of elements of your culture or your climate, really, that bring together this purpose and identity into something that day-to-day people talk about. We use this equation day to day. Why? Because when we have a decision and we need to think about it, is this better for the player or better for the company? We always remind ourselves it's about what's better for the player, for our customer, right? And so really, when we look at the core muscles, and I'm going to go very quickly through this just because it's 20 minutes. What I want to do is give you sort of a brief overview of all these different muscle groups. And the purpose is, as I'm going through this, I want you to think, oh no, that muscle is strong, but that muscle is weak. What do I need to work on? And so forth, right? So we talked about sort of the customer at the center here. I want to talk about the rest of these core muscles that really, these provide the foundational alignment around customer centricity. If you want to be a customer centric company, you need a workforce that is mission aligned and passionate about that purpose. They need to care about the customer. How can you be customer centric as a company when the people that you hire do not care about your customer, or they just take it as a transactional job? Tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. At Riot, there is no way we could have pulled off something like KDA if we didn't have people that were passionate about delighting and surprising our players. Again, I could talk about each of these for hours, but I'm going to go quickly through all of them. The board. It is going to be really hard for a company to orient itself around the customer, because that orientation sometimes requires long-term bets. Something like esports in general, and if you don't know what esports is, you can look it up after this session, but it's basically professional gaming at a global scale. Think of the FIFA World Cup of gaming, right? That has been a 10-year investment that has been losing millions and millions of dollars for us. So if our board was not oriented around these long-term bets in service of the customer, we would have never even had a platform like esports to pull off something like KDA. Right? And then partners. Most every company works with partners because they can't do all the work themselves. They are an essential part of your value stream and your work stream. If your partners are transactional with you and all they need to know is tell me what I need to do and I'll do it, also that will hinder your customer centricity. And so really these three foundations, these are core elements. And as you can think about it right now, these take time to build. These aren't things, you can't change your workforce overnight. You can't change your board overnight, right? But these are relationships that you need to build over time, and the relationships based on trust, not on transactions. All right, so moving us forward, those are the foundational elements. Those are the things that enable customer centricity, right? Then the other sort of muscle groups, leadership, individuals, and operations, those increase, or the lack of them decreases, really business agility. So we're going to start with leadership really quickly. So with leadership, we need to understand, if we hire these mission-aligned, passionate people really, Stephen just talked about that this is an investment in people. People are the most important asset of business agility in an organization. Why? Because they are actually the most adaptable, creative, innovative part of the entire system. And so with the KDA story that I just shared with you, we have a person named Toa, right? Toa, it was not his job. He's a music producer, but he had the idea of let's do KDA. It's actually not part of his job to come up with the opening ceremony for the Worlds, right? But we need, as leaders, one of our main roles is to hire the right people, nurture them, and empower them. Really unlock the full potential of people. And that comes by creating psychological safety, by mentoring them, by finding them. Like hiring is a huge responsibility of leadership, and by nurturing and supporting them throughout their journey. Second aspect of leadership, another big muscle that is important, is the one team mindset. Many leaders, they invest in building their own kingdoms or silos. That will not yield business agility. That will yield localized agility at max. But if you want business agility, the leaders of the organization need to have shared goals, need to be able to work together, need to think as one team, because what it takes to pull off something like KDA, for the entire company to be able to pivot, right, and focus its attention on something like this, what it takes is nothing short than the top team being aligned around this strategy. So bottom up ideas from people like Toa, unleashed by good people management, and then a strategy, a top team, a leadership team that says, you know what, we're going to pursue this and we are going to work together on this. We don't leave it up to our employees to fight the battles of aligning the kingdoms. We at the top of leadership, we actually work together. By the way, at Riot, this is one of our weakest muscles that we had to work on. During the formation of KDA, we called it the coalition of the unwilling, because it was so hard. So these are one of the muscles we work on a lot right now. All right, moving forward. Again, you can see from my pace, I'm going very quickly. I want to give you all the overview here. Strategic agility. Strategic agility is creating a strategy that creates space for the people to understand, yes, I need to get from point A to point B, but don't tell me what to do. It's a strategy based on impacts and outcomes. And that allows space for our frontline employees to find opportunities like the KDA opportunity I was talking to you about, to innovate for the customer's sake. So strategic agility, one team, and people management, key muscle groups in the leadership muscle group. All right, next, operations. Operations are essential to enable agility and to increase agility. Something like KDA required 23 different contracts to be signed in a matter of 3 months. HR, legal, finance, all of our back office enterprise, they need to be oriented to help the front line succeed with the customer, not to hinder them. Many organizations, the way HR, legal, and finance are oriented is around protecting the business, but protecting it from who? Sometimes it becomes protecting it from employees. Something like KDA that was not in our budget, that was not planned for, easily finance and legal could have said, nope, this is not on our roadmap, we don't do it. No, but instead it was actually an orientation of, this is great for our customer. We will help you figure out how to do it. You guys go focus on building that. So that's enterprise agility. Process agility. This is the agile a lot of us are familiar with. How to inspect and adapt and create value streams and ship things earlier to our customers. Structural agility. This is the ability to create coalitions and change our structure, whether actual structural changes or creating virtual structures when these opportunities come about. So the KDA team, how do you form a team, right, quickly to work on this for 6 to 8 months and then disband the team? That is actually very hard. And again, like I was saying, connected to the one team mindset we talked about earlier, but this is one of our weakest muscles that we are still working on. But again, these are really essential muscles to increase agility. Individuals. The last muscle group here is talking about individuals. And I want to tell you a little bit of a story about KDA. So any game has music. I don't know if you've played a game without music, but it really, really is horrible. But anyway, we have a game, so we have music in the game. What happened over time is we said, let's experiment. Let's try something different. Let's take some of our music and actually create a music video from it. That wasn't on our roadmap. It was an idea. It was an idea similar to KDA that came bottom up. Is like, okay, let's try that out. We created our first music video. From there, another person came up with another idea. Wait a minute. What if we take that music video, add some other albums to it, and create a music album? We created a music album. Again, none of this was like, let's do this step by step. It was opportunities that we saw that could delight the customer. That's the orientation. That's the identity here, right? From there, we said, wait a minute. We now have more experience with music. Why don't we bring big name music artists like Imagine Dragons to our performances? Let's add them to our albums and so forth. So we started doing that. All of these things, all of these experiments over time built the capability that enabled us, when we wanted to pull off something like KDA. If we wanted to pull off KDA in the short amount of time that we had, but we had no experience working with artists, no experience publishing our own labels, no experiences creating music videos, we wouldn't have been able to pull it off. And at the heart of that comes this mindset of ownership and accountability, where these ideas for experiments and trying things out, they don't come from top leadership. They actually come from people like Toa, the person I talked about earlier, who had an idea, but he felt such a sense of ownership and accountability that he said, you know what? What if we do this? Paired with that is craft excellence, right? So we have to invest in this craft excellence, because Toa wants to do an idea, but what if we don't know how to do that, right? It requires deliberate investment in building craft, right? Because if we wanted to pull KDA off and we had no experience in music videos, no experience in managing artists, in augmented reality, it just wouldn't have been possible. Not because of the lack of agility, because we just didn't know how to do it, right? And so this constant experimentation in areas that we don't know how to do, that actually really enables agility over time. And one of the key things that actually stops people from doing this is the fear of failure. And this is something that I want every one of us to reflect on. What are we doing to create a culture where our employees, or we, fear failure versus people that are willing to try something new and experiment? And this really brings us to the heart of the third aspect of our individuals, which is the growth mindset. A mindset that is not afraid to try new things. A mindset that is open to learning. A mindset that not fears failure, but actually embraces uncertainty. And this is what we call the growth mindset. And an adaptation of that is really the agile mindset. When we are faced with uncertainty and ambiguity in our work, we have this desire to reduce failure by doing what? In a fixed mindset, in that industrial age mindset Stephen was talking about earlier, by freezing things or forcing them to a known state so that I can execute from that state. But the agile mindset, when faced with uncertainty and ambiguity, meaning I'm going to experiment with something new, I'm going to try something new. Okay, how do I reduce that uncertainty and risk? By learning quickly and efficiently through feedback, right? So what that does is people aren't afraid to fail. We create a culture of learning and experimentation. And this culture of learning and experimentation is really at the heart of what enables this business agility. So to summarize here, when you think about Agile, Agile is really not about practices and iterations or doing this or doing that. It really is a mindset. And this mindset is described by a set of values and principles, but manifested through an unlimited number of practices. And these unlimited number of practices are what enable the agility of the organization. But please be aware that when we boil Agile down and agility down to simply what we do, we end up doing Agile, not being Agile. I don't want you to do fitness. I want you to be an athlete, because really it boils down to this identity. We are customer centric. We will put a persistent amount of effort. It is not a sprint, it is a marathon. I would actually say it is never ending. This culture that we built at Riot isn't something that we went out and said, let's become agile. We just said, let's be customer centric and let's do everything that it takes to win with our customer. And in that process, we had to become agile because our customers are constantly changing as well. So,
Sorry, Ahmed.
yes,
I will
and
have to interject you because now we are okay, just in time.
I knew I had 10 seconds left, so I was wrapping up. So that's my story. I hope it was beneficial to everyone, and thank you very much.